And in Sacramento, Uncle Mark and his wife, Mary, had a nice mini mansion. Very nice. And he had a person that gardened, that had a garden just for him, for his vegetables and fruits. So he moves to San Francisco and he rents for $35 a month. He's worth about $28 million. But the house he rents has a big backyard. And he wants to grow his own fruits and vegetables. Because if he has a bumper crop, he can sell them on the street, make a few extra bucks, you know. Very frugal, he makes a great treasure. Mary must have had a conversation with him in this picture. She doesn't look happy. She wants a nice mansion. He finally says okay. And Leland sells him this part of the property. Leland owns the whole block, built his mansion down below. We don't know why he built it low. And Uncle Mark buys it. And I know Leland, even though I didn't know him personally, is thinking he will build a nice little mansion like he had in Sacramento. He doesn't know that Mary's going to build the mansion. And Mary's going to hire 7 architects to work on it at once. Oh. The most interesting home ever built in the city. Take a look. This is what would be right here. The Mark Hopkins mansion built by Mary. Look, if you look where my finger is down the corner, you'll see the Leland Stanford mansion, which looks like a little box compared to this. Look at the castle. 7 architects, all wanted apart. And Leland's box down here in the corner. Of course, she built it out of redwood. They all did, remember? All but one. So when Leland looks out his back door, this is the back of the mansion he sees next to him, which again makes his mansion look like a box. I don't know what his problem was. He had still the largest dining room. Her only held 50. Uncle Mark never saw this mansion. He's called Uncle Mark because when he came to California in the 1850s, he was already in his 40s. That was old. Most people that came for the gold rush were in their teens and 20s. So Uncle Mark in 1878, as she's completing the mansion, dies. And leaves her all the money. And now she's got to decorate. So she hires a decorating company from Boston who comes out and sends Edward Surleys. Edward Surleys is about 20 years. She's in her 50s at this point. He is in his 30s. He's going to decorate. We all have to have an organ in our mansion. Take a look at the organ there on the 2nd floor. This is just one room of many. It takes him 3 years to decorate this mansion. He's finally done in 1881. Finally done with the mansion. And she says, I don't like San Francisco. I want to move to Great Barrington, Massachusetts, where I'm from. Will you come with me and help me build a mansion there? And he does. And they build there, and they go to New York, and they build, and they're back in Great Barrington in 1888, and she says to him, will you marry me? He says, I have to think about it. And he comes back to her and says, yes. And they marry in 1888, and in 1891, not mysteriously that we know of, she dies. And leaves everything to Edward Surleys. And he comes out to California. He doesn't want this mansion. There's nobody living in it. It's totally furnished. Nobody's living here. 1891. And he turns this over to the Art Institute of San Francisco. The Art Institute. And this becomes the Mark Hopkins Art Institute. And they move in. They've been in tiny quarters downtown. They moved into this glorious mansion here. And they're here in 1906 when the fire comes up the hill. And they don't know that they have a 500,000-gallon cistern in the basement in case of a fire. They have no clue. Nobody does. course, it comes up and takes everything. And of course, some of the people came up the hill, some of the artists came up the hill, grabbed their paintings, looked across the street at the only brownstone in San Francisco, where the flag is across the street, the Brown Building, and put their paintings inside there because they knew it'd be safe. They knew it'd be safe. So it burns down, the school comes back, rebuilds a building for a school, not a mansion. And in the 1920s, a guy named George Smith with a lot of money buys this piece of property and builds the Mark Hopkins Hotel. The Mark Hopkins Hotel. And his penthouse is on the 19th floor. Remember that. Give me a question on this. If you get it right, I won't give you the yellow envelope. How's that sound? That's pretty good. So 19th floor. Unbelievable views. A couple moves in the 1920s and stays until the 1930s. And when they move out, it's near time of Prohibition ending, which I think was 1933, sound about right? 33. And he decides to turn that penthouse into a bar. And he sits down with his good friends and he says, what am I going to call the top of the Mark? And they said, you're going to call it the top of the Mark. No, what am I going to call it? They said, George, you call it the top of the Mark. Oh, good idea. Top of the Mark. Who's been at the top of the Mark here? Who's been at the top of the Mark? You have? You have? Okay, top of the Mark. Top of the Mark. It became world famous during World War II. Because about 1.5 million military people shipped out of San Francisco to fight in the Pacific and went through San Francisco to fight in the war. 30,000 a month went to the top of the Mark for their last drink. Many of them took their fiancés, girlfriends. My mom and dad were engaged. My dad's ready to ship out to the Pacific. He's in the Army. And they stand in line here on California Street. And they go up and have a drink and pray that he comes back alive. And the next day, as his ship leaves the bay, my mom and her 2 sisters, all of them local girls, went to the top of the Mark, to the northwest corner, called Weeper's Corner, and watched his ship leave the bay. And that happened on a daily basis. When he came back alive, the first place they went was the top of the Mark. It's part of San Francisco history. Doesn't look like it did in the 30s, in the 40s, but I got to tell you, it's still a great view. So, if you get a chance, go up and take a look, have a drink. Great view, great evening when the lights are on. It's great. Okay, we are going to head for that